So, Santosh, can you tell us who you are and why you're here?
Hello, everybody. I'm Santosh. I'm the co-founder and CEO at DLT Apps. And one of my pet subjects is how do we make client onboarding a simplified task for our customers? And that's what I'm here to talk about. It's great to be on the panel with you.
Lovely, thank you. So I guess to sort of set the scene a little bit, and I'm guessing, most of you here are here because you've got some sort of interest in onboarding. I mean, if not, well, welcome to the onboarding family. I'm sure you'll learn a lot. But I think for those of us that are familiar with this territory, there's a huge amount of competitive advantage in giving our customers a really positive onboarding experience, and then using that experience as the foundation for what will hopefully be an amazing relationship with our organisations. But we think also that it can be difficult. The challenge, as I see it, is how do we create an experience that is absolutely seamless for the vast majority of our customers who are good actors, and how do we make it impossible or really difficult or close to impossible for those ones that we really don't want to have in our banks, that we want to keep out of the financial system and that we want to alert our regulators to. So that is the heart of the challenge. And what we're going to explore in our conversation is, the view from the kind of fintech side of things as to what they see and what Santosh has experienced in his interactions with many different financial services organisations. And then I'll provide my view from where I sit within a very big, complex legacy organisation. What we're slightly missing today is the kind of challenger bank view. So if there's anyone out there from a younger financial institution that would like to chip in a view, we'd love to hear from you. So let's get started, Santosh. So what in your conversations with clients out there, what are some of the big challenges that you see in this space?
The problem, the way we see problems on the client onboarding side, I suppose it's the same problems everyone. So client acquisition is not easy. Client acquisition takes time. Acquisition of customers is often manual and error prone, and customers, I think, and in the kind of business that we work in, institutional investors, their onboarding process takes anywhere between 8 to 12 weeks. And by the time the onboarding journey is complete for these customers, maybe the investment needs have gone away. So maybe they haven't got the requirement that they had prior. And what we see is customers who started their onboarding journey drop off at that journey. Either they found an alternate service provider, or they found someone else who probably provided a better service, or in some cases they've lost the interest altogether. So what we see is there is a lot of friction in the current customer onboarding journey, and it's something that we are consciously trying to solve. How do we make this again? So we are operating in a heavily regulated environment. We can't take shortcuts. So just because we want to shortcut the account opening process, it cannot be that we've cut the regulations. So it's something that we are constantly looking, and from a fintech way in, these are the kinds of challenges that we want to solve. We're saying, how do we apply modern technology? How do we make this easy? Can we introduce concepts like, and we'll explore these subjects in a bit more detail, saying, does a concept of a digital identity work? What does a digital identity ever mean? And how can we enable organizations to start sharing customer data across them? So some of the themes that we're trying to solve through. So I think it would be useful, Alia, from your perspective, also to know, saying, what are the common challenges that you currently see within your role, and how does what are the methods that we are trying to solve those?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and I think if I was to pick on two areas in particular, one would be, obviously, given that we're a global organisation, we have a multitude of regulations that we need to comply with, and we have a very, very diverse customer base. So we've got everything from sort of sole traders right up to massive multinational conglomerates and sophisticated financial institutions. So for us, we definitely can't have a one-size-fits-all solution. We need to be able to accommodate every single possible type of corporate entity that you can imagine, and then probably some that you can't imagine, and to navigate the kind of arbitrage of, well, no other bank is asking me for this, they don't ask me for this in my country. Why are you asking for that in this country? How do we kind of get around in a legal way the kind of data considerations that we need to manage, without that becoming too cumbersome either for our internal colleagues or for our customers. A customer wants to just interact with us as a bank. They don't want to have to deal with many different people. So for us, the sort of continual challenge is to make that experience as positive as possible for the customer, and of course to leverage technology to help us to do that.
It's very useful to also get the bank's view in. I think it's both, isn't it? So it's just not the clients themselves, but it's also the colleagues who are involved in the process. So the current processes are frustrating for both. You're saying, how do we make that a smooth ongoing journey? So just not for the clients, because they are frustrated at the end of it, and the colleagues themselves sometimes feel that because a small bit of information isn't available, makes the whole onboarding journey stop in its tracks. I think it'd be, again, useful to hear the colleague side of the journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, again, this is where technology can help us as much as it helps the customers. Where we can leverage data sources in a way that's seamless from a colleague experience, so that the information is sort of pre-populated to the extent it's possible, that it's verified to the extent it's possible, and that the systems that we use kind of supports what is in the end a very complex process. Our policies and procedures cover a huge amount of ground, and so for our colleagues to be able to kind of easily navigate those processes with appropriate and context-sensitive support through the system to help that from their end, but also in a way that kind of makes the potential risks obvious to them, so that we onboard tens of thousands of entities a year, and within that we need to be able to spot the kind of needle in the haystack, the odd one that deserves a closer look, or that we need to refer to our colleagues in compliance. And so anything that a system can do to help us kind of bump that up is helpful. And I'd be interested from your perspective, as a vendor, what solutions do you build that kind of help those kind of complex challenges?
Yeah, so as DLT apps, so we've got a product called Quinn, which is our customer lifecycle management software, of which onboarding is a key part, and of course the entirety of their lifecycle management. The way we are trying to approach this problem is with client centricity. And what we've also seen with larger organizations like HSBC and the other banks is, the customers do not know that there are various divisions within the bank themselves. So maybe their life cycle starts with them having to open a bank account, and then there changes, or they may have separate requirements for loans, or it could be security services, it could be custody services as based on their needs. So the clients get frustrated because they say, look, we already bank with you. Why don't you use our details and get our account going on the other parts of the business? So there is so much legacy within the current, or there are disparate systems, maybe legacy is the wrong word. So there are disparate systems within the organization. It makes it harder for that smoother onboarding journey, because each time the customer wants to start a new relationship, it typically starts with a fresh onboarding journey again. So we're trying to tackle that head on with Quinn, which is bring client centricity. So at the end of it, it is the same client. So their details, if they haven't changed from the time they previously opened the account, if we keep that record up to date, we could share that data again with the customer and their consent. Saying, okay, we are willing to share that with the other department, thereby trying to reduce the onboarding journey, the time it takes to 1 day, less than a day or so. So Quinn is client-centric. So we've got a concept of a digital identity, and that digital identity is the one that provides the details saying, look, these are the policies, this is what the client has gone through, so these are the thresholds that were set, and is that in compliance with the policy that's been set for that department. And if they have to move across those departments, it would be the re-KYC against that set, and in most cases, we wouldn't need any additional details from the customer. So what we're trying to solve using Quinn is, could we say if the details of the customer are known, and again, there are two sets of data. Obviously, one is publicly available, one that's available with the bank. The information that we do not know is what's the additional requirement that the customer has and the need for a new account opening. If we capture that and leave the friction only to that point, it will pave way for us to cut the onboarding journey timescales, and we'd like to get to a point where the second account journey, for example, if, they have to go through KYC AML once, so it's like we can't escape regulations. Once they've gone through that, you get to the second journey, which is as friction-free as possible for the clients. And that's how we are looking at digital identity. And again, in the future, so we want to think future. So ideally, we would want to have conversations, say, HSBC. So would HSBC be willing to share their data, because it's clients at the end of it and it's client consent at the end of it? Could they share that data with, say, Lloyds Banking Group? Or so it's the same customer at the end of it, and it's the customers that they're consenting they share with the others. So if Quinn as a application has aggregated all the customer information, why should it be difficult for the customers to consent providing their data to another data entity? And these are the kinds of industry thought processes that we want to bring to the table. And of course, technology is the easier part. I think it's more the customer adoption part for us that we are working with.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, in this instance, the technology bit is easier. The sensitivity around data sharing, whether that's, between institutions and, through public-private partnerships, and indeed clients themselves, I think there's a great deal of nervousness about data, and there have been very, high-profile scenarios recently where data is being hijacked by cyber terrorists. It feels to me, at least, that whilst I think logically that is the direction of travel, there is still a huge amount of nervousness from all parties around the reaching the kind of practical reality of that, given some of the the more nefarious people out there trying to break into our systems. So, in terms of those kind of organisations, and no sooner have you deployed a bit of technology than it's already sort of legacy. So I think this applies to probably all sizes and shapes of financial services firms. What's your sort of main piece of advice around how do you really build a client-centric onboarding process? What are the kind of principles that you would recommend people to have?
Yeah, so and this is where the vendors can really step up their game. So with most legacies, again, so banks have got their own rigorous cycle. So once live, we don't want that once live system to stay still. So we need to find ways as to how we keep the products up to date. So whether they are regulatory in nature. And these are some of the conscious technology decisions that we make, saying how do we keep our products in line with the current regulations, and how do we help our clients, say for example large banks, navigate the change processes that they have, because there is always this nervousness saying, does the new release cause a disruption to the current operations? The way we potentially could answer that question is saying there has to be a bit of both, i.e. so the vendors have to step up and say, look, this is our so we've tested, we've proven we've got a fail-safe mechanism of ensuring that there's no disruption to service. And equally, the banks have to also rely and also seek that input, saying, look, so now that you're saying that this is proven, show us how that's been proven. So a risk-based approach with the vendors stepping up is how we see things. But again, I understand change is complex, but the last thing that we should be doing is, because change is complex, the product can't stand still.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, and I think that is the challenge for both parties, right? Both for the banks and for the technology suppliers, is nothing can stand still. We're constantly shifting, trying to become more competitive, trying to adjust and adapt to the kind of ever-changing regulatory environment, trying to make sure our technology is up to date. I'm going going to ask you a tricky question now, I think, which is we often, on my side of the table, hear things about these kind of low code, no code, you know, any sort of sensible business user can configure this system and it will be wonderful. And I have to say my experience of that has not always been entirely positive. Do you have any thoughts on that? And I'm not asking you about your product, by the way, but more generally, you know, have we really are we getting to a point where that is a reality, where, you know, a sensible business user can actually manage a good deal, not all, but a good deal of a system, and that in itself becomes the way in which we kind of keep our technology up to date, because we don't need to go through massive, you know, development cycles?
Yeah, so is a good question. So as technologists, I'd always say technology is easy, and it's very hard to be on the other side and say the technology may be not as intuitive as, because we do this day in, day out, and it's easier for us to visualize that. So we've got, so when we design products, we've got this built in. So we work with both organizations, some who are comfortable adding these additional rules themselves, but equally, say for example, Quinn, so we come compliant with the UK regulatory, so we've got templates that says, so if you use this template, you'd be in compliance with the current UK regulations for institutional investor onboarding or retail investors onboarding or retail clients. So we provide both of, so saying here, so if the clients are happy to configure rules for themselves, they could, but if not, here we use a concept of a template or a policy that comes, so that our analysts, our KYC AML analysts set up for our clients, and the clients use them working in conjunction with their first line, second lines of risk and based on the compliance policy definitions.
I'm just going to remind everyone, if you've got any questions, do send them through. If you've got a question in the room, put your hand up, put it in the app. We're definitely happy to take any questions. I feel like we can't have a conversation today without touching on the subject of AI, and particularly generative AI. It's something that we are doing a huge amount of work on at HSBC, and some really exciting developments in the wings. One of the big questions that we're kind of considering from our perspective is the kind of model governance aspect to the use of generative AI in a regulatory setting. And I think it's fair to say there's a lot of work to do to make sure that any use of generative AI in that capacity is very well moderated and very well governed. What are your thoughts from where you're standing in terms of the application of this in the onboarding space?
So we use a lot of AI in our components, and obviously the route to live or the testing of AI-based solutions is quite different to the traditional testing that you do, because there was this recent news that someone trained that model to say, look, any suggestions that I've got are stupid. So we got to work around some of those. So now what we do, so we use AI both in the traditional sense and in the conversational sense within our product. So within the traditional sense, it's things like our rules engine. So how do we determine the risk rating for a customer? So that is again a complex model, because it's not only looking at the customers themselves, but it's also looking at the customer needs. So which field are they planning to do business with for a bank? So there are quite complex business rules that determine the risk rating for a customer and their account opening process. So we try, so our data scientists and our data analysts are always looking at so what industry factors should we feed in so that we are coming up with a consistent mechanism. But on the conversational AI side, so for example, our SAR reporting, so things like those which need quite a lot of verbose description based on all the system parameters that are within the system, we use AI to generate the template that's required in a more generalized form, and of course the route to live for those would be saying, we've got to test our model, saying, here, look, is this dealing with all our expected cases, all the unexpected cases, and is it self-learning? And that's the tricky part, saying, so how do we prove that this model is self-learning? Because it's seen an anomaly somewhere. Has it introduced something here that's escaped all of our automation testing and the rest of the traditional methods? So AI is here to stay. Here, AI will be here. It's just that here, so we as both the producers of software and users of software, we just got to get through saying, how do we allow the relevant levels of control on it, and how can we have confidence that here, look, these are the kinds of output that the AI is generating that we could send to regulators, for example. If the SAR reporting is getting to our regulators, we've got to be sure that this is right and we've not done something stupid in it. Yeah. But equally, I think, Alice, it would be useful just say, within HSBC, I know you mentioned that here we're toying with AI, and also what has worked or what hasn't worked, or is there something that you would say, yeah, maybe we've tried this hasn't worked?
I mean, I think we're taking a genuinely experimental and innovative approach here, and what I've seen working very well actually is that kind of let's try stuff, let's figure out how to do it, let's move rapidly with proof of concept. We've got some really interesting Gen AI tech now that is helping us navigate our own internal landscape. So things like, we've got, as you can imagine, a wealth of policies and procedures, and individuals sitting at their desks, rather than kind of scroll through a massive document, can they find the relevant piece of information quickly? And we're certainly seeing some success in that space. I mean, I think it's a bit of a coy answer. I wouldn't really say we've had any failures yet, because our failures are helping us to learn and to do it better. I think there's a long way to go, though, before we can say confidently that we can embed those capabilities in processes where we're leveraging external information. It's one thing to use our own data and information, but it's another to go external. But we have had an interesting question on this topic, which is, how do you see AI transforming the client onboarding process, taking a long-term view? And I think that kind of question of the long-term view is really interesting. For me, I think that it will definitely play a role, probably in kind of from a generative AI perspective, gathering and researching information and presenting that to our colleagues, so that they're less about going out and kind of scraping information out of annual reports and company websites. That is being done for them, and their role is then more about applying a human judgment at that level and looking for any anomalies or dealing with anything that is truly exceptional. And that's certainly the direction that I think we're going in. And that's not just about the generative AI capacity, but that's more about the machine learning side of things, where we can use data to potentially say, well, okay, this, the information that we see about this customer coming to us looks like some other ones that we've seen. We can start to recognize patterns better and identify if there are patterns that have in the past indicated potential financial crime risk. Then we can take that into consideration at the point of onboarding based on that sort of information. So I think that's where we'll head to, but I'd be intrigued to know what your thoughts are as well around the kind of the long-term future.
So the KYC AML regulations are not going to the regulations are going to increase with the increased actors and the amount of threats that we currently see. So the AI, whether that's generative or traditional AI, machine learning, there are three disparate sets of data here. One, the data about a customer that's publicly available. Two, the data that's currently within the bank systems, and that could be disparate amounts of data having disparate, very, very small little bits of information. So these are data sources that are currently known. And third is the data the customers themselves know, is something that's private and it's non-known externally, and that private bit of information is the one that's driving them to start the account opening process. Yeah, so the way we look at AI, at least when we build products, is saying, how do we get better at using these data sources that are already known, whether they are publicly available or with the financial institute, get very, very good at consolidating that and leave very, very little that we need input from the customers as part of the ongoing journey. So if AI, ML could help bridge, combine these disparate sets of data and get to that risk rating, here's a low, medium, high, how do we provide all of these insights to the colleague who's making a decision saying, look, I agree, I don't agree. It's that, and we say here, AI's got a long way to go. AI is here to stay. It's just that how do we start embracing and how do we start taking those baby steps in using the data that's currently not used all the time. Yeah, so let's start exploiting data, because data is the key in any business process, is how we would go about doing it.
I mean, I think you're right to mention data there. It certainly is a huge component, and both one of the greatest strengths and sometimes not something that is always fully leveraged by organisations. We've had another question come in. Let me just read it. Can Alia talk a bit more about the criteria or test and learn approach to leveraging external data in Gen AI HSBC are taking? How are you distinguishing what is reliable and what is not? Well, you have strayed into territory that I don't feel like I've got the expertise to cover, to be honest. We've got huge numbers of very, very clever people that are looking into this. So I think what I would say in answer to that is we are taking this very, very slowly and very, very carefully. You know, we are hugely aware as an organisation of the pitfalls in some of this technology. You know, we know the kind of the risk of kind of hallucination, as it's called, and I was reading an article earlier in the week about deception in some AI technology. So I think we are treading very carefully, and we are acutely aware of our position as a significant financial institution to make sure that whatever we do it with the highest possible standards, the highest possible ethics, and ensuring that we behave with absolute responsibility towards the communities that we serve and our regulatory duties. So that's about as much as I feel like I can say. I'm very happy to talk to anyone about it offline, but I'm really no expert in this field. But I am pleased to say that there are lots of people in the organisation who do know this extremely well, and I feel confident in their capabilities to get us to the right outcome. I might throw that over to you, though, in terms of like how are you managing that kind of process within your organisation? You know, there are lots of challenges, and I'm sure your customers are interested to know how you would guard against those sorts of risks.
Yeah, and how do we know what information is real versus what information is fake or is deep fake? There's so much that's currently ongoing, which is we're producing data like here I can't even remember what that terminology is as to how much data is increasing on a daily basis now. So it all relies on us having an effective risk. So again, some of the classic controls that we ever have so that we can't get away from those controls. So i.e. first line of defense, second line of defense. So obviously technology has to do its part. So we have our AI-based rules engine usually filters a lot of these, but some get in because they're so good these days. So, but then the first filter or the zero or the zeroth line of defense is technology, i.e. filtering out data, and then it gets through first line, second line, third line through an organization. By the time we get to making, and again, so when I talk first line, second line, again, maybe we are encroaching on that taking longer for a customer onboarding journey. So it's about how do we find efficiency in our processes by having already made those decisions, saying, look, this data looks suspicious, but we need a second eye to just validate that information. So these are the kinds of controls that we are thinking of building within our software. So it's all about making the colleague aware that, look, we've looked at these 15 data sources, 10 we are confident of, 5 we are not so confident on, and these are the reasons why. And then AI can do a lot of automation, but at the end of it, it requires the operators, their subject matter expertise, their knowledge of the system, because they've seen this time after time, and then finding that feedback loop back into the model itself.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think it's easy to kind of forget that with every advancement of technology that benefits us, it also benefits the kind of nefarious actors out there who are, as we speak, frantically investigating how to use these capabilities to break back into a financial system which has got much better at keeping them out. We see increasingly sophisticated fraud scams. I can imagine that criminal organisations are investing huge amounts of their profits into research and development into generative AI, because why wouldn't they? They've got the money, they don't pay tax, I think that's probably a likely outcome, but it's an important point for us to think about in our efforts to streamline onboarding. We need to make sure that we're keeping pace not only with our competitors, not only with regulations, but also with the inherent risk of what's happening in criminal organisations who still got that money they want to launder, by the way, who still got those sanctions they want to evade, by the way, and have access to the same sort of technology as we do. what are your thoughts about how how we on the good side of the house can continue to kind of be vigilant about those sorts of risks in this kind of rapidly paced technology?
It's about the ongoing stuff. It's about, so how do we keep the current data within our systems current with the customer's real situation? So how do we monitor that? Okay, so have there been changes to our customers' data? Is that, so whether there are changes to their beneficial owners, whether there's change in the various aspects could change. So the challenge is data is the king, and data quality is always at the heart of everything that we currently do. And as long as, so we get to real-time view saying if customer data's changed, could we publish that here saying, okay, something's changed about this customer, and all the underlying systems, whether they are the accounting systems or the other systems, if they are made available. And also even the happy path scenario saying, here, look, customer data's changed, we still feel that they are within the threshold that's been set, but still having a manual review offline as a low risk case for the workers helps us get to that data quality better. And
it's interesting, you're talking there about data quality and availability. I mean, it's trust is the big thing there, isn't it? How do we ensure that the data that's coming to us is trustworthy? And I think there's a lot more that we'll need to figure out over the coming years and months on that one. A slight deviation of topic, but still in the subject of onboarding, and something that I'm increasingly involved in my day job is how we, and it's another kind of buzzword of the day because I've heard it in several of the other presentations, is about the ESG agenda. And so increasingly we're looking at, what information do we need to capture at the point of onboarding in relation to our customers and their ESG credentials and the information that we need to capture. Now, this is a space that is definitely evolving, and we don't yet have a firm regulatory landscape to operate in, but I just wondered if that is, and we haven't talked about this, by the way, so I'm throwing this at you out of the blue. But is this something that is sort of on your mind in your organisation?
Yeah. So one of our clients is a social impact funds platform, and so the funds that they've got on their platform is all geared towards social impact, whether that is here in the UK or whether that's worldwide. And one of the challenges that say wealth platforms, especially with the ESG mindset, or in this case the social impact side of things, how do we ensure that the funds that they're selling through the platform and the asset managers are staying true to their ESG philosophy? Again, boils at the end of it, it's all down to data. It is what's happening with the with that fund where's the money the profits that are being made from that, are they going to the right causes? So how do we get that feedback loop from those causes that are getting this funding in, and could we see how much growth have they had because of this funding? So it's that varied steps. So there are a lot of people that talk to me on having an AI ML based model, because again it's combining disparate sets of data with a view saying could we get to an independent view saying are we meeting our ESG philosophies? And it's a trend that's increasing. We could see a lot of players in the market that are actually measuring the firm's commitments to their ESG policies. Again, here is more data into the system.
So all roads lead back to data, don't they? Well, look, we're sort of coming towards the end of our time, and so I want to just return to the sort of the where we started, which is about how firms can optimise client onboarding to gain a competitive edge. And I wondered if you have any closing thoughts about you speak to a lot of different organisations. What would you say you notice about the firms that are doing it well, and what would your kind of advice be to firms that are thinking about what they need to do?
So at least there are two common pitfalls. So most organizations are thinking onboarding journey is the first journey. Everyone here has been through some sort of an onboarding journey, and sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, even when the bank has got information about us. So there are two challenges that we see. One, the banks sometimes have got a problem with their onboarding journeys. Sometimes, and in most cases, they are thinking of a change, but change is hard. So for them, how do they adopt, say if it's well and good saying, look, this is what we are doing in Quinn, but for us, the challenge from an outside way in saying we think we've found a way to solve the problem, but getting that solution embedded within the bank here possibly is the, and again for the right reasons, because there's so much regulatory compliance, there's so much that we've got to prove to get to that platform. How do we define the platform is ready here makes it a bit harder. So onboarding across organizations, I think everyone wants to get to how fewer clicks does a customer has to make to get their seamless onboarding journey, and it's measured by number of clicks, unfortunately. And again, asking the relevant bits of information, sometimes, at least within the institutional investor side of things, the commercial knowledge, the jargon that's used in the onboarding journey, sometimes even sophisticated investors don't get it. So how do we allow the right levels of help and assistance for them to get through the onboarding journey is some of the challenges, which we would say here. And maybe one final, at least question from me, Alia, it would be useful. And again, this is a very selfish point of view, saying, look, we as software or fintechs having solutions that solve problem, what should we be doing here to get our solutions ready here for us to be adopted into organizations like HSBC, here conscious that here the decision-making process is quite, there are various ways. So, but what's your advice to organizations like us as to how do we get better, what can we do, and how do we start preparing ourselves serving in organizations like yours and the complex needs?
It's a good question, and I think, from my perspective, obviously we do get approached by a lot of organizations, and often it's something we've already got or something that doesn't really suit our specific needs, because we are at the kind of pointy end of the pyramid in some respects. There aren't many organisations the kind of breadth and scale as HSBC, so we are not a simple organisation to deal with. So what I would say is you need to have a pretty strong USP and a good understanding of where you might be able to fit in with a big organisation like us, and the ability to kind of integrate with a complex legacy architecture and bring value into that end-to-end is absolutely critical. And I think that going back to what I said earlier about that kind of low-code, no-code proposition, I mean, anyone who's got one of those is definitely going to get a foot in the door, because that's a huge advantage, as is the kind of ability to instill trust around the kind of data points that you mentioned. So I think that's what I would point out. Lovely. Look, we're almost out of time. If there's anyone that's got a final question, please do call it out. Otherwise, we will leave it there and give you 1 minute and 42 seconds to go and take a break before your next session. I would just say thank you very much, Santosh. Really enjoyed speaking to you. I hope you have all found it useful as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Alia.